Apartheid-era cop who was fighting to clear his name, Joao Jan Rodrigues, has passed away. A reopened inquest had found that the anti-apartheid activist Ahmed Timol had been killed and not committed suicide as believed. Rodrigues had turned to the Constitutional Court in a final bid to be prosecuted for the murder of Timol nearly 50 years ago. Timol's nephew, Imtiaz Cajee, joins us now. Imtiaz, great to speak to you this afternoon. Now, nobody really celebrates anyone's death, but is there a sense of relief for you and your family?
Good afternoon, Hugo. No, not at all. First I must correct you that Rodrigues and his legal counsel made absolutely no attempt to clear his name. In fact, they went out of the way to stall the commencements of the criminal case proceedings against him by dragging and delaying the matter for more than 3 years, making almost 19 court appearances at the taxpayers' expenses. And the painful reality is that he and his legal counsel have beaten the system, Hugo. He simply takes to his grave the answers that he had about the true nature of events that unfolded in room 1026 at the notorious John Foster Square police station in 1971, placing himself at the crime scene at the 72 inquest as well as the 2017 inquest. And the fact of the matter is that he showed absolutely no remorse and not prepared to make a full confession. And the state failed to take him to task and to hold him accountable for my uncle's death.
So we can presume that you have the feeling that justice was not served in the case of your uncle?
Most certainly. And I think this is the feeling of families throughout the country. I belong to the Apartheid-era victims family group. And this is applied to families all over, desperately wanting to know when their cases will be heard. I mean, if you look at the case of Dr. Similani, it has been with the NPA and on the court roll, since 2013, 2014? And to date, her criminal trial has not commenced. Some of the security branch operatives have already passed on. So the lack of energy, the lack of political will on the part of the state puts us in this precarious scenario where apartheid perpetrators who've got answers about how our loved ones were murdered will simply take their secrets to their graves under the watch of a democratically elected government, which is an absolute disgrace. And this is something that the government needs to live with, their dismal failure in the prosecution of TRC cases.
Now, you talked about being part of a grouping of families who have obviously been impacted by incidents such as this. Now, what efforts have you made to engage government or the ANC?
Well, I mean, there have been numerous attempts. There was a forum that was started where talks were held between the African National Congress and the Foundation for Human Rights. And then that task team collapsed. I was part of another task team with the NPA and the Hawks, and again with civil society. That also collapsed. So there's a clear strategic effort at play to ensure that these matters don't progress. And there are many stakeholders involved in these matters that are not always looking after the best interests of families. And the painful reality is that perpetrators will continue passing on. Apartheid-era records will continue to disappear because government has dismally failed to declassify apartheid-era records. Witnesses are passing on, and the reality is that the likes of Rodrigues will continue passing on without being held accountable for the heinous crimes that they committed, Hugo.
So in many ways, you're suggesting that 1994 did not sever the hand of apartheid, and that it still is able to manipulate issues such as this that we speak about this afternoon.
Well, most certainly from our perspectives as families. And the question that must be asked is about what transformation has taken place at the NPA. Has there been any institutional reform? And who controls that place? Because from my experiences engaging with the NPA, and specifically the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit, the mandate of dealing with TRC cases was left in the hands of apartheid-era prosecutors. Yes, Hugo, apartheid-era prosecutors who were responsible for prosecuting anti-apartheid activists were given the mandate and responsibility to investigate the crimes of their own apartheid regime. It's absolutely shocking, but this is the reality. And it has continued for way too long. And that is precisely why in my uncle's matter, Hugo, the two other security branch officers, Neville Els and Seth Sons, found guilty at the 2017 inquest. And according to Judge Billy Motley's verdict, they had to be charged for assault and for perjury. And the NPA, after 30 months of hounding, made a decision not to charge either one of them. And both of them are in their 80s. So you can clearly see the strategy on the part of the NPA. Ensure that perpetrators pass on, these cases disappear, families get tired, and this matter so slowly has a painful death in the corner, which is often forgotten. And this is their strategy, and this is something that we are fighting aggressively against.
Now, obviously, the death of Joao Rodrigues, where does that leave you in terms of the efforts that you, your family, and other families were making in seeking out justice?
Look, you can be rest assured that his death is not, speaking personally as a nephew of Ahmed Timol, his death is not going to deter me. It only makes me stronger and makes me more resolute that my struggle for truth and justice is no longer just about Ahmed Timol, but the likes of Mopetla Mohape, Imam Harun, for Ashley Creel, the Craddock Four, and many, many other families, Bantu Stephen Biko. What about all the other cases? So this is a very significant milestone, and newsrooms like yourself keeping this particular story in the public domain is very, very important, so that government can be held accountable, and they need to put a plan on the table demonstrating to us as to how they intend dealing with TRC cases, because the painful reality, Hugo, is that they've simply got away with it for way too long.
Now, it seems that there is a movement from what you describe and what it is that you intend to do. Now, ideally for you, what would be the best case scenario moving forward?
The National Prosecution Authority needs to work with families directly, as quickly as possible. They need to set up a team, which I believe they've done, but the progress of those investigations teams, Hugo, cannot progress without direct involvement of the families concerned. They need to work with the families urgently to make sure that as much information as possible is gathered. Where perpetrators are still living, they must be confronted. And as always, they must be given an opportunity to make full disclosure, full confessions, despite the fact that they failed to do so at the TRC. Like in the case of Rodrigues, he was not subpoenaed in the TRC when he was living. So the window of opportunity from the majority of us as families continues to be for apartheid-era perpetrators to come forward and to speak the truth and to make full disclosure so we can have genuine reconciliation, which is something that the TRC had failed to do. Because in our view, the TRC was simply a platform for victims to relive the horrors of their past. And the majority of perpetrators simply sat and watched as our loved ones broke down, shedding tears, recollecting the lives of our loved ones. And this is something that we can never forget. And the intention was very clear, that once the TRC is over, the families will forget. And that is why it has taken so many years, Hugo, for the Ahmed Timol inquest to be reopened. And that also because of the persistence work that I had led, not because of the work that the NPA had conducted. And let's not forget that Joao Rodrigues was not found by the state when they reopened the inquest. The only reason Joao Rodrigues appeared at the 2017 inquest, Hugo, was because his daughter had handed him over to me. So if his daughter did not contact me, he would have probably watched in the comfort of his home the entire 2017 inquest, which is probably what he had done in 1996, watching my grandmother testify at the TRC hearings.
Imtiaz Cajee, thank you so much for your time, enlightening conversation. And he is the nephew of Ahmed Timol, and we're just talking about Joao Rodrigues, who was involved in that case and has recently passed away.